With 2023 behind us, I figured I would count down my top 5 favorite cards for Commander that came out last year, specifically in the 99. So without further ado, let's hit up a few honorable mentions. The 3 honorable mentions I have are on this list because they are sweet cards, but they aren't nothing we haven't really seen before. And the first one I want to talk about is Staff of the Storyteller. This is a 2-mana white artifact that says when it enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying. And whenever you create one or more creature tokens, put a story counter on Staff of the Storyteller. You can also pay a white and remove a story counter from Staff of the Storyteller to draw a card. While this is a nice source of card advantage for white token decks, for all intents and purposes, it's a worse Idol of Oblivion. While sure, this does make a 1/1 flyer on entry, you do need to pay the 1 white mana every time you want to use to draw a card. Well, yeah, it can be used at instant speed, you still would have to pay the 1 white mana when you wouldn't normally have to do that for Idol of Oblivion. So it is still a good card, and it is nice to have a second copy of Idol for those white token decks. The second honorable mention is Entish Restoration, a 3-mana green instant that says sacrifice a land. Search your library for up to 2 basic land cards, put them onto the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. If you control a creature with power 4 or greater, instead search your library for up to 3 basic land cards, put them onto the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. While the staff was a slightly worse version of a card that we already have, the Restoration is a strictly better copy of a card that's seeing a lot of play right now, effectively becoming the new second copy of Harrow. Unless you're into blinking things, that is. Between this and Harrow, I'm actually not entirely sure which one's better. I want to say Entish, especially if your commander can meet that 4 power requirement, but I guess it depends on the deck and the density of the 4 power creatures. I guess Harrow would be the better option if you have a little bit lower curve on your deck, because the lands do enter untapped, so you can cast the Harrow and then an additional 2 mana spell that turn, but I think Entish is a little bit better of a card, especially in the decks that might only want one effect to get as many lands onto the battlefield as possible. The final honorable mention I have is Tribute to the World Tree. Triple green for an enchantment. It says when a creature enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card if its power is 3 or greater. Otherwise, put 2 +1/+1 counters on it. I honestly couldn't tell you why I love this card so much. Just something about it being a weird combination of Soul of the Harvest and Rhythm of the Wild makes me really enjoy it. The only reason it's an honorable mention is because it doesn't do what you want all the time. For example, if it goes in a +1 counters deck, you might not always get the +1/+1 counters that you want if its power is big enough. Or if it's going in a big creature deck, then, well, I mean, I guess this card is just a better version of Guardian Project that also triggers off your tokens. Even though this card is phenomenal, it is triple green, which makes it hard to slot into a lot of different decks, and it's also the tiniest bit unfocused, which is why it's my top honorable mention. Alright, now for the actual top 5. In 5th place, I have Lotho Corrupt Sheriff, a white and a black, so 2 mana for a 2/1 halfling rogue. Whenever a player casts their second spell each turn, you lose 1 life and create a treasure token. Now, anyone that plays with me knows that I unreasonably love the card Monologue Tax. Now, a lot of people hate it, but I guess I'm not alone in loving it because it is in over 34,000 decks on 88 Trek. But I don't know, this card always just kind of has a special place in my heart. The tax may be a little bit slow, but after turn like 5, it normally generates me at least 3 treasures per turn rotation, which is a pretty good investment if you ask me. Lotho is pretty much an upgrade to that. Sure, it is a creature, so it does die easier, and you do lose life every time it triggers, but it is 1 mana less, so your investment gets recouped 50% faster, and the biggest thing, it triggers when you double spell too. Just that fact alone makes it an upgrade from Monologue Tax, unless you're either an enchantment deck or want 2 of this kind of effect, and it might make me take it out of most of the decks that it's in for me. I guess we'll have to wait and see. Number 4 is Clever Concealment, a 4-mana white instant with Convoke. Any number of target non-land permanents you control phase out. This card is great, and we all know it's great. I'm actually not sure if this is a hot take, but I'm willing to say that this card is a better Teferi's Protection. Realistically, the protection is only used as a fog about, what, like a 5th of the time? And the other 80%? The concealment is equally as effective in protecting your board from those Cyclonic Rifts, Toxic Deluges, and any other web that Indestructible won't cover. That's because you can cast the concealment for 2, 1, or even 0 mana a lot of the time. Not to mention it's about half the price, so if you're considering getting a Teferi's Protection for any of your creature-based decks, I would recommend the concealment instead. At number 3, we have Talion the Kindly Lord, a 4-mana 3/4 Dimir creature with flying. He says as he enters the battlefield, choose a number between 1 and 10, and whenever an opponent casts a spell with mana value, power, or toughness equal to the chosen number, that player loses 2 life and you draw a card. In my opinion, Talion is one of the sweetest mid-range creatures that's been released in a while. If you're curious about the correct number, the Command Zone did a video and came to the conclusion that most of the time, you'll be naming 2, but every now and then you'll want to name 3. While nothing can really compare to futuristic study, except I guess the fish. Talion comes pretty close. Honestly, I don't even know if I have to go over this one. Just by reading Talion, you know he's going to draw you a lot of cards for that mana investment. At number 2, we have Raise the Palisade. It's a 5 mana blue sorcery that says choose a creature type. Return all creatures that aren't of the chosen type to their owner's hands. When Perplexing Test came out in 2021, it seemed like the perfect Kindred Dominance X card for a lot of token decks. Bounce all the non-token creatures, your opponents might have like 1 or 2 lying around, but then you can just swing in at their mostly empty boards for the win. But while that was more or less Kindred Dominance for token decks, welcome to the literal Kindred Dominance for blue decks. Raise the Palisade is just the perfect finisher or pseudo board wipe for those blue tribal decks. I mean, what else can I say about this for blue tribal decks? A one-sided evacuation is still pretty damn good, even if it is just a sorcery speed. At number 1, we have Roaming Throne. Yep, pretty much all of you knew this was coming. If you don't know what Roaming Throne does, it's a 4 mana 4/4 artifact creature with Ward 2 for some reason. When it enters the battlefield, you choose a creature type. It's the chosen type in addition to its other types, and if a triggered ability of another creature you control of the chosen type triggers, it triggers an additional time. We all know this card is absolutely insane. It's one of those weird edge cases where it almost makes you think it's not as good because of the first 2 lines of text. When you read this card, you think, oh yeah, you throw it into some tribal decks to get some extra triggers on your creatures, right? I mean, sure, you can do that. Or more realistically, if your commander has any sort of triggered ability whatsoever, you just throw it into your deck. Are you playing Prosper? Cool, now all my Tieflings triggered abilities double up. Do I have any other ones? Well, probably not, but 4 mana doubling up all of Prosper's abilities seems pretty good. Are you playing Gryson Starn with like 10 other creatures? Well, might as well throw it on Human to deal 5 damage per ping, and who knows, you might even get some random bonus triggers every once in a while. This card is just so absurdly good in so many decks. I mean, if you just look at EDH Rec, 36 out of the top 50 commanders have some sort of triggered ability on there. Sure, there might be 1 or 2 of them that aren't worth doubling up, but there are so many commanders that are going to want this card that it's going to be in absurdly high demand for years to come. So that's about it for my top 5, or I guess top 8 favorite cards of 2023. What do you think? Do you like any of these cards? Are there any cards that I missed? Be sure to leave a comment down below. If you like this video and want to see more, like and subscribe, and as always, I hope you have a great day. If you enjoyed the list of my top 5 cards of 2023, check out this other list. It's where I rank all of the sort of X and Ys for EDH.